weekly live stream that I do with Brian White from Future Oza. We've got Hans here from Hans C. Nelson. Both have YouTube channels as well. And one of the things we like to do every once in a while is do a review of the key news that's been happening over the last week, maybe even spilling over to the week before, the big things that are happening. So welcome, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
I am doing great. I can't speak for Hans, but it's been a pretty good week. Stock is doing, whatever it does, and I'm doing whatever I do.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay. Well, let's
the
start
stock
with
does what it does, and I do what I do.
I think the reason why the stock is the way it is, of course, is because there's this kind of overhang, which is what's happening with Elon and his shareholder lawsuit that he had and his pay package. So there was development earlier today. So basically, apparently, both Musk and the Tesla shareholder, they've negotiated a stay of the pay ruling while they're working towards an appeal. So it does certainly look like now that Elon is going to, and Tesla is going to do an appeal of this. In the meantime, they're negotiating with the shareholder and his lawyers. So as you guys know, the Tesla shareholder won the verdict last month. And so now the Elon's $56 billion pay package was voided or about to be voided. And so the two of them have rescinded, that's the right word, has asked a judge to pause her ruling until this appeal is resolved, or maybe a negotiation between the two parties. So the lawyer, Greg Varello, for the shareholder, told Reuters that the two sides will agree to a stay if they can reach a deal on an appeal bond. Not sure what that all means, but it does look like that it's the first indication that Musk intends to appeal the ruling. So they, in addition to moving this Tesla stake headquarters to Texas, but it looks like that before that Elon and Tesla can appeal, the two sides will propose a final order for approval by the judge. So they need to submit something new to the judge, and one of it is Elon and Tesla has to pay this fee to the lawyers, and it's going to be likely the largest payment to a law firm ever. They need to tell the court their position on those fees by March 1st. And then it looks like that, let me just finish it off.
Yep.
They have 60 days to file the appeal, and it's likely going to take at least 6 months to resolve. So this is the issue. It's good movement, but at this point, it means that it could be 6 months before any of this actually is finalized.
So the way the bond works, if I sue you in federal court, or if I sue you in a court like this, and I win $1 million and you wish to appeal it, you have to put up the full $1 million so that when the appeal is resolved, the payment is right there in escrow waiting. We don't know what the payment bond would be on this. The plaintiff didn't file to get the $55 billion, so that's not on the table. We don't know what the settlement would even look like. I say fair is fair. This shareholder feels wronged. Purchase back his shares at the 2017 price and call it even. No? Too low? What do you think?
So I would say so far everything looks like it's shaping up in accordance with what Richard Hofman had basically outlined in the conversation that he had with Farzad right when the news first happened. And apparently, I'm just going to briefly kind of regurgitate some of the information that he shared here for the audience, that the basis for the award that this, and it's not the shareholder, it's going to be the lawyers, are going to pursue in this case. They're going to say, hey, we can save Tesla shareholders $55 billion worth of stock, and we only need a paltry 5% fee in order for saving Tesla shareholders that much money, which would be, over $1 billion in that case. And so I think that was even mentioned in this article, that the fee that is being discussed is the largest fee to a law firm in history, and that the number is in the billions. It's not in the millions. And so all of that looks to be kind of shaping up as expected. I think that whatever this resolution looks like here, because, if Elon is able to take this to the Delaware court and win, then I think that kind of negates the basis for the award to this company or this law firm. And so I'm sure that right now what is happening is they are trying to come to an agreement where the law firm gets paid, they get paid well, and they get paid guaranteed regardless of what happens moving forward, in exchange for going away and allowing Tesla to move forward kind of unopposed with whatever they have planned next. So that's what I'm reading into this and expecting based on, what I've learned so far from Richard.
So what I've seen is that it's not really 55 billion. What Tesla had put aside already in the financials was something like 2.3 billion. So that's the real benefit to shareholders is 2.3, not 55. So right there, you've got a likelihood of a much smaller potential payout for the attorneys and the plaintiff. But also, if they take this to appeal, I mean, do you really want to risk it? Because I think there's a lot of pressure from other companies and all their lobbyists and lawmakers that they own to get this in the favor of the corporation. Because if this wins, it sets a real wild precedent for what can happen to other companies in the future. And I don't think they want that. I think the attorneys would be very wise to seek a very small settlement that would be undisclosed and private so that they can claim a big victory without having to show the actual size of the victory. I think if they cover their legal fees plus a little bit, that's going to be enough. And their legal fees can't be more than tens of millions.
I wish you're so right, Brian, but I think you're being a little optimistic here. The lawsuit was won by the shareholders. The lawyer and the shareholder are basically holding all the cards. Do you think like Elon is like even in any way in the frame of mind that he's going to pay massive money to the lawyers? That's so disgusting. And he's the kind of person I'm so happy he is. It's going to stand up to this. But you're right. They need to do the appeal. They need to get this thing go away. There's bigger things going on here. That's massive for Elon, for the company, for the world, right? This whole AI and robotics AI move. But boy, I just think that the lawyers and the shareholder have all the cards. They're not going to settle for just $1 billion, $2 billion. This is going to be quite a bit.
I think they'd be crazy
right.
not to. I think they'd be crazy not to settle because you just don't know what the appeals court is going to say. And, even if you think the odds are good, it is a big, big gamble.
Yeah, I would agree with Brian on that. Just because I think we're using the same logic. I do not think that the appeals court of Delaware can uphold this ruling. First, the reason that the court of Delaware is the default court for companies to incorporate in is because they are very stable and predictable. And one of the phrases from the ruling was, "This ruling boldly goes where no court of Delaware has ever gone before," which is like the exact opposite of the entire operating system of the business court of Delaware. And so for those reasons, and we're talking about insane amounts of corporate tax revenue that Delaware stands to lose by becoming an anathema state of business, not a default state of business, but do not ever incorporate in the state of Delaware for any reason whatsoever. If you imagine being a board member or an executive of one of these companies where you are now faced with the amount of uncertainty and risk posed by being incorporated in a state that is willing to become so creative with their application of judicial rulings. Just, that's not something that I want to, as an executive, go to bed worrying about. I just don't. There are so many other problems that they have to deal with on their plate. That's not something that sounds attractive. And so, this is not a situation that is lost on the appeals court. This is not a situation that is lost on members of the government in Delaware. This judge is there's just no way that everybody involved in Delaware is going to there's no upside for them to uphold this ruling. It's like, okay, judge, you made your point. Like, we have punished Elon enough. This is not something that they're willing to stick their necks out for, and basically walk the plank over. Like, there's no continued upside for the state of Delaware to pursue upholding this ruling.
I agree
Okay.
entirely on all points.
So let me share again with the folks what's happened. The people who just joined, right? There's a development this morning. Elon's $56 billion pay package case. Sawyer did a great job kind of just summarizing the article from Reuters. So based on a new letter that was filed yesterday, it sounds like Tesla and Elon will appeal the ruling. That's the first thing we've learned, which is great. Before Elon and Tesla can appeal, though, the two sides will propose a final order for approval by Judge McCormick, which will include a petition for legal fee. So this is how much they're going to pay the lawyers. That legal fee, which will be paid by Tesla, is expected to be one of the largest ever, if not the largest legal fee ever paid in history. It's going to be billions. Tesla will likely oppose it, but I mean, they need to both agree to it and propose it. So the fee petition is expected to be filed by March 1st. So that's pretty soon. That's in a couple of weeks. But if that's approved, there's going to be 60 days to file an appeal. And then the final point, I don't think he said here, but he said elsewhere, is that it's probably going to take 6 months for this appeal to happen. So there is going to be a very long period of time here, but it's a development. So something has happened, which is good news. But now it's going to be 6 months before we know what happens. Do you guys think that, is there a scenario where this overhang will be not, even though it's not resolved for until 6 months, there's that feeling by the investor community we can move on from this? Or do we really need to wait till the end when this is finally finalized?
I think the overhang is real, and that investors, certainly institutional investors, would be cognizant of it and watching to see what happens. So that's my take. Is we don't know. Is this going to be $2 billion in cash that has to come out of the cash on hand? That's a substantial amount. I don't think the settlement would say we'll just give you some shares, because they would immediately dump them on the open market, and that would create a little flash crash of sorts. So I think this overhang is real. Hans?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a kind of a Twilight Zone sort of thing where there's going to be a number of shareholders who just kind of move on and they forget about this and they don't think about it. And then there's going to be others who this is a major deal for. And so I think that, we could see kind of erratic movement between groups of people who do and do not care about this ruling moving forward. But I would say, if you're thinking specifically about retail, we'll say it probably doesn't matter all that much. If you're talking specifically about institutional, then I think it matters a lot. And so then the question is, which one of those two groups is more, has more influence over the share price movement between now and when the rulings come in? And I would say, if we're talking about short-term price movements, my bet is that institutionals are going to have a higher impact on that price movement than retail.
Yeah. So this is a note from David I thought was good. Didn't Elon say the legal team would never back down when right, even with bad odds? I do remember him saying that that's his feeling, right? That like, this is what I mean by, I want them to do the appeal, absolutely. But then this idea that they're going to pay the lawyers billions and billions of dollars, he might need to back down.
I don't think that there's
ahead.
a difference between them asking for billions of dollars and Elon agreeing to, like, whatever backroom deal gets done is not going to be done anywhere close to the ridiculous amount that they're going to ask for in public court. That's a bargaining chip in this whole process.
Yeah, that's true.
That they can use as, like, if this goes through, we make billions of dollars. And so today we're offering you the chance to, for the low price of $100 million, walk away. Like, that's how this is going to play out.
I think that's right. Both sides stand a lot to lose. And as I understand, there's only one level of appeal on this. It doesn't go to the Supreme Court. It just goes to the Supreme Court of Delaware. But I think for the attorneys, it's just too risky. And we did see the comment that lawyers are sharks. They will not accept it. Yes, but they're not. There is a number they will accept that is less than the one they're asking for. And the question is if that's a number Tesla will also accept, because there is risk and they're not all or nothing kind of people. They still want just to maximize the dollars for the risk.
Yeah. I do think the timing is so critical right now. Elon needs to get his pay package, not only the one that happened in the past, but the new one that's happening now. AI, robotics AI is happening today. It's happening very, very fast. Every day this goes on. We can't wait. We need Elon here. We need him to be planning things, big things. We need to give him those big milestones. I'd rather them resolve this ASAP, pay the dollars they need to pay, move on, and then come back after these guys later. There are ways that Elon with big dollars in his bank account could make huge changes to whatever, the law firm, the Delaware courts, whatever it is. You can already see that he's making a massive impact to Delaware. You know, his influence of moving his companies out, right? There was a Neuralink that moved out, Boring Companies moved out. I'm sure all of them are going to move out shortly. But his influence to getting a lot of other, he's basically letting others know, right? What company was it that TripAdvisor was trying to get out, but they couldn't get out? So he's going, you better try to get out of Delaware now before they shut it down. But it's happening. There's an exodus. So his ability to change Delaware, being the go-to state to incorporation, I already know several companies that have formed this week that all decided not to do in Delaware, which is a shock because it was just almost an automatic, thing to do for all startups in the past decade or longer. Now it's not.
Now it's not.
So he's got the ability, yeah.
I did want to remind everybody, YouTube periodically unsubscribes people. If you should double check, make sure you're subscribed to me, to Herbert, to Hans, and for that matter, follow us on X.com. We all are there and having a great time. We get to share a lot of insights on X that are too quick and timely to make into actual videos. So if you're not helping out there, let us help you out there with better information.
Yeah, we just got this from Anthony. Thank you so much.
You,
when will the shareholders vote for transfer of corp to Texas? Good question. What does that entail? How does it affect the shareholders? By the way, I've invited Richard, the lawyer who's been part of these conversations. I've invited Sawyer to be this, so we're waiting for them to join. But this is the kind of question that, do you guys know? I mean, any news on what's happening with shareholder vote? That should be pretty straightforward, right? Alexandra was saying.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is, because you and I talked about this morning. Alexandra was pointing out that there is other states often charge a franchise fee. When Neuralink moved to Nevada, they now have a 0.75% franchise tax they have to pay. And that would be a big, big hit to a company with the kind of revenue Tesla has. If
that exists in Texas as well. So moving to Texas is going to cost a lot of money on a yearly basis for Tesla.
Yeah. And I don't know if institutional investors, especially retail investors, can make a vote with their heart, but institutional investors really don't. They make those votes with their wallet. And I don't know that they would be willing to just donate money to the state of Texas on the hope that judgments would be more favorable. Because I don't know. You can find a judge willing to color outside the lines in any state if you're unlucky.
Yeah, and even as a resident of Texas, I would say that, Texas is not a business unfriendly state, but it's also not the most business friendly state either. And there's a lot of funkiness that goes on here related to special interests. And, one example that we already know that affects Tesla is the car dealership lobby and their ability to prevent Tesla from technically being able to sell vehicles direct to consumer here in the state. But that's just one example. There are other examples of that kind of exist in different areas. And so it's definitely somewhat of a complicated state to do business in, and I would not be opposed to them really shopping it around and potentially finding an even more business friendly state to be incorporated in. Obviously, since their headquarters is located here in Texas, that's a positive thing that those two can kind of go hand in hand. But I don't think that this decision should be one that is made just blindly because this is where the headquarters are.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and review what just happened, and then we're going to go cover a lot of the other news that just happened recently. So first of all, this morning, it looked like that letter was sent to the judge yesterday. Tesla and this shareholder that won that appeal, that won the the judge awarded the rescinding of the pay package to Elon. They're proposing a stay. So the two of them are agreeing to a stay of pay ruling. So they're asking the judge to pause her ruling until an appeal is resolved. So that letter was sent yesterday. And the two sides will agree to a stay if they can reach a deal on an appeal bond. So it looks like the shareholder's attorney wants to know how much they're going to get paid. And then so that's going to happen. And that needs to be submitted by March, April, February, March 1st, which is it March 1st or May 1st? March 1st. Yeah. In a couple of weeks, they need to tell the court their position on the fees. And then if that happens, the appeal will happen. It could still take 6 months.
And remember, just because the Elon lost 56 billion doesn't mean that that's what the shareholder is entitled to. You don't get the CEO's pay package. You get damages commensurate with your perceived loss. And if this isn't a class action suit, so it's not like everybody's going to be getting 50 cents or $20. This is more like, I mean, what is the actual harm that this shareholder endured? This isn't, so I don't even know how you calculate an amount, but it's not 56 billion. It's probably not 2 billion. I just don't know how you calculate it. I don't know what the remedy is.
Yeah. All right. So I've invited some more people to join, especially Richard Hofman, who's a lawyer who's been following this closely. I've invited Sawyer Merritt, who reported on it, knows some more information. We'll wait for them. In the meantime, let's report on other news that happened. This one happened several weeks ago, I think, or a couple weeks ago. And Giga Berlin announced that they're now able to reach 6,000 Model Ys per week. And then they're saying that our next target will be 10,000 per week. So it's a big celebration, Giga Berlin. So this comes in the heels of them having to shut down their factory, right? Because of the shipping. What is it? The Suez, the shipping disruptions.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the what is it? The Star Wars. The shipping disruptions, it's war. So tell me about that, Brian. What do you take of the 6,000 per week? Is this ahead or behind schedule for Giga Berlin?
Well, whose schedule? I would say, in my view, it's behind schedule. This is a number I would have hoped they would have reached 6 months ago. But when you are already selling the most popular car in the world and you're making it in 4 high-volume factories, you start to run out of headroom to sell more units. So they've got to increase the demand, and they've been doing that in a variety of ways. In some countries in Europe, there are 0 or 0.9% financing. That juices the numbers a bit, and there's a lot of opportunities there. The big problem in Germany is that 70% of cars sold are not sold, but bought for customers, employees. They're leased vehicles. And so they end up, and I think Sawyer even posted about this on X, saying that Tesla's lease rate in Germany is well below the industry average, and they need to work to get that up so they can move more units.
Hello, we have Sawyer. Sawyer joining us. Welcome, Sawyer. Are you all set up?
Yep. You guys hear me?
Okay, good. Yeah, I can hear you. So Sawyer, you are the breaking news guy. You've got these things up. We just reported on it. We shared that this tweet that you sent out about the development and your explanation of what happened. We walked everybody through that. And then, of course, after we do this, I'll also talk about this. You unearthed this kind of new video that they dropped. So go ahead and tell us what you know about the pay package.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys covered it, but it sounds like yesterday both sides, Elon's side and the shareholder who sued the Tesla side, they together filed a letter and gave it to the Judge McCormick, essentially to have a petition because they need to figure out how much for Tesla to pay the lawyers, and I don't know exactly what that'll be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the largest legal fee in history, probably a couple $1 billion. That'd be my guess. That doesn't mean that'll stay there long term. It sounds like Elon does want to appeal this based on the letter yesterday. So the petition should be filed by March 1st, according to the lawyer, the plaintiff's lawyer side. And if that's proved, then essentially Elon has 60 days, 2 months to file the appeal. And then once that process starts, I think max you should take like 6 months maybe for a result. Could be quicker. I don't know, but there's going to be some more uncertainty potentially in the months to come.
So, Sawyer, do you think this is very good news, right? Because if they can appeal and if they say that I'm going to go ahead and pay the lawyer off, we're going to submit appeal, that the two sides are negotiated together, then at that point, the overhang would release and people will start feeling comfortable even before waiting for the appeal? Or do you think this is going to be an overhang for 6 months?
I mean, I hesitate to use the word overhang because I feel like we've overused that in the community with a lot of different things. But yeah, there's going to be uncertainty in terms of like what will happen with this appeal. Will the Delaware Supreme Court agree with Judge McCormick's ruling or not? And depending on that outcome, will sort of dictate the future of Elon Musk's compensation package potentially for his next one. If the Delaware Supreme Court does not agree with McCormick's ruling, then that sort of clears the path for Tesla to create a new compensation package that gets Elon Musk to 25%, probably just through similar market cap and operational milestones similar to the 2018 one. But if they agree with McCormick's ruling, it's a little bit more difficult because they can't go through the same process. I don't know what that would mean for the Tesla board, if there would need to be some shuffling. That's just speculation. A lot of unknowns. So I guess we're just going to have to sort of wait and see what the Supreme Court potentially rules on.
Mm-hmm. You guys have questions for him? You're on mute.
A question I would ask is, why would it be billions? Just because Elon is losing 56 billion, it doesn't mean that the plaintiff would be entitled to 56 billion. And Tesla isn't even paying 56 billion. The amount that they'd put aside to pay this was accounted at about 2.3 billion, whatever the value of the shares were at the time. Why would it be? Why is the legal opinion? And I haven't read the legal opinions. I'm not a lawyer. Why would it be so high, do you think?
I believe it ends up, I'm not a lawyer either, so I don't know for sure, but I believe it's like a percentage of the total potential compensation that Elon Musk would have received, which doesn't make total sense to me. You could argue that the whole point of this, shareholder going after Tesla with his 9 shares was really just the lawyers like having their eyes wide open, be like, wow, we could potentially make a lot of money here. So it was really them wanting to do this rather than potentially the shareholder. So I think they saw a potential big payday and they might get it. So
do you think so David, David asked this question earlier. Elon had already previously said we're not gonna kowtow to these kinds of scenario, even if it's a low chance of winning. We're gonna go and fight this. Is Elon is he gonna just pay the lawyers billions of dollars?
I mean, maybe he has to just temporarily anyways, even if he appeals. I'm not sure. I think Elon feels like this ruling is so wrong in his opinion. And it's like, it sets a really bad precedent, to be honest, for the public markets, for Delaware, of course, that he feels like it's almost his duty to sort of appeal this. And, he doesn't know what the outcome will be, of course, but I think that's the least he should do, to be honest, at this point. I think it was me he replied to when he said that, like, we go after, I don't know the exact quote. I think it was late 2021. I had posted about Tesla settling a case from Yahoo News about, I think, something related to the legacy Model S and X. And he just sort of said, we're not gonna settle a case, or if we think we're wrong or right. I can't remember the exact quote. I'll try to find it.
What I remember him saying was, if we're wrong, we won't fight it even if we think we could win. And if we're right, we will fight it even if we think we'll lose.
Nice.
That sounds about right. Yep.
Okay. So what do you expect to be the next bit of news then? So you've got this that dropped yesterday, letter sent to them. You said that March 1st, which is really a couple of weeks from now,
Yep.
we're going to hear something else then.
We'll probably see the petition filed. I would maybe even before March 1st. And then essentially from there, Elon has 2 months to sort of appeal this thing.
Then appeal it. And then from then, you said, are you guessing the 6-month thing, or was that you, or is that somebody you read that somewhere?
No, that's where I read. Yeah. That's, I guess,
Okay.
just a standard. Yeah.
Standard that it could take 6 months for them to actually submit the appeal. So
Mhm.
this could, or the appeal will be resolved within 6 months.
It sounds like resolved in around 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll know within 6 months from now, one way or the other, what's happened here.
It won't be the long drawn out process that we saw with the first case. I mean, the first part of it, that took 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. It won't be that long.
So do you think that 6 months is something that Elon and the Tesla board could wait before? Not only do they know what happened to the previous pay package, but even before they can give them a new pay package? Do you think both parties would be willing to wait for that?
I would think they would wait, to be honest, because depending on the outcome of that, Delaware Supreme Court ruling really changes things in terms of what Tesla is able to do for Elon in terms of next compensation package. So they might wait. I'm sure they're probably already working on it anyways, like just in case there's various, because they could take out the appeal at any time they want. They could just say, you know what, we're not going to pursue this, whatever. So they're going to probably work on the compensation stuff anyways. But the board will just do that separately on their own rather than, consulting with Elon probably.
I think it's tricky to know whether or not to accept the verdict or appeal it, or even or how to negotiate it when the court didn't specify the remedy. I mean, what are we negotiating? So I think that it introduces a new layer of complication to the matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard the former SEC chairman say that, does a bad process need to overrule sort of good intention or whatever it was? The shareholders approved this, 73% of them, and the board approved it. Obviously, Elon too. He was accepting of it. So it's sort of uncharted territory. This hasn't really happened before. This is why it sets a bad precedent, because now you have all these companies like trying to scramble and getting out of Delaware the best they can because they're worried about similar things happening. And Neuralink and Boring Company, they're now based out of Nevada. I think Boring Company filed earlier last year. And now because Tesla's based in Texas, I think Elon said it makes sense for them to do it there. Otherwise, they probably would try to move to Nevada as well.
Okay. Well, we're waiting for Richard Hofman. Let's report on the second thing you posted this morning. And this was Tesla released a new video on how they made the new Model 3 better than the previous version. Franz said, we took out what I call the baby fat out of the front end. Where did you get this? This came directly from Tesla's X account?
Yeah, so Tesla tweeted that out, or posted that out. They essentially just go through a lot of the similar stuff that we've seen in other videos from them. But Franz is basically saying we made it more streamlined. It's more of a grown-up vehicle. We cut out some of the baby fat in the front. It was a little bit bulbous, maybe. And they reinforced the doors, of course, for better impact protection, and makes it quieter as well. And then various other team members, I guess, talked about some of the other technologies they put into the car.
Was there anything in that video that you thought was a really good part? That was
No, we knew it. No, everything we know, everything out there. So they didn't sort of say anything new, I don't think.
We took out what I call like the baby fat out of the front end. Slimmer headlights, the puffy cheeks are gone, the full volume in the hood with the shoulders, the waist, really slippery silhouette. Felt like a refined athlete.
We really tried to improve the side impact of the vehicle by creating a stiffer and stronger door structure. We reinforced the hinges here. We reinforced the door latch and striker here. And then we added a catch here at the bottom of the door. And what we do here is we catch the door in 3 places to really resist that impact.
One of my favorite things about the rear end of the car is the taillights and how we were able to incorporate them into the deck lid. The lights are out wide, gives it a really wide stance and character. Now we don't have any split lines when the lights are lit. Diffuser's a little bit bigger. Really just cleans up all the lines and the character of.
Okay, and then so we got Richard Hofman here. So, but before we do that, Sawyer, you also reported, in addition to that, right, that the Model 3 price points is actually the same or lower. I'm sorry, the Model Y long range is cheaper than the Model 3 long range. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you include in the US, if you include inventory discounts and the federal tax credit, a long range, brand new long range Model Y is $10,000 cheaper than a brand new long range Model 3, which is a pretty wide price gap. The starting price, the MSRP on the configurator is roughly the same between the two, but you include like the Model 3 is not eligible for the federal tax credit, and the Model Y is, and the Model Y you can get like another 10% off from the inventory prices. So you can get it like a $38,000 brand new Model Y long range. Like it's wild. The prices were 66 grand like just 2 years ago.
So let's reserve that conversation about what the hell they're doing with the Model 3 Highland pricing versus the Model Y. But certainly. So Richard, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you. We've just been covering for the last 30 minutes here the developments have been that Elon that Sawyer just announced. That letter was sent yesterday that they're asking the judge to stay and stop their until they decide on what to do with the appeal. Can you tell us what's actually happening?
Yeah, so the two parties are trying to negotiate an amount of a bond. So to get a stay, you have to get an appeal bond. So the parties are trying to figure out a number. So what's the significance of the number? The number is supposed to reflect what the damage amount would be if they lose the appeal. So if there's $55 billion at stake in terms of this case, one could argue that should be the amount of the appeal. Somebody could argue it should be 2.5 billion, the actual value of it. But there'll be some argument like that. And to get an appeal bond, there are companies that do that. You give them generally 1% to 2% of the face amount of the bond. And you have to collateralize that amount also. So we'll just make up numbers. So let's say the appeal bond ends up being $10 billion. You'd have to pay $100 to $200 million for the bond premium, and then you'd have to collateralize the $10 billion with some kind of property, stock, something like that. If that happens and you get a stay, that means there can be no enforcement of the judgment. Now, what's the significance of the judgment? It's not the denial of the pay package, it's the attorney fee award. So what these guys, the plaintiff's attorneys, are going into, and I think the judge said that by March 1, both sides would submit papers as to the attorney's fee issue, whether that's just briefing or a motion, because generally it would be a motion. The prevailing party would file a motion. They would set forth how they determine the fee award, and there would be some award of fees. So if March 1 is the submission date, the judge would then rule probably by May 1. And then if a final decision was reached by May 1, Tesla and those parties would have 60 days to file a notice of appeal. So let's say that's July 1. And then the appeal would generally run, I know they said 6 months, but to be fair, probably this would be a heavily litigated appeal. So more likely 12 months, I would say, in Delaware. So you're looking somewhere between mid to late 2025. The significance of the stay is if they got a fee award now, so let's say there was an attorney fee award in May and there was no stay, they could go collect that. They could literally go out and collect it. Who would they collect it against? Would they collect it against Tesla? Would they go after the board? Would they go after Elon? Is there insurance in place that might cover some of these particular factors? If there's ultimately a judgment, I know there was a talk about why you would appeal. The reason why you'd appeal is the attorney fee award. The other things you might be able to work around, but the attorney fee award, if you elect not to appeal, that's going to stand. And it's going to be probably, my guess, the largest attorney fee award ever issued in the history of the United States. So that being the case, that's why you have to appeal, especially if the appeal, let's say, I'm speculating because we don't know what's going to happen March 1. So I'm just reading the tea leaves. But if there's an award and the award was going to be paid by the shareholders, there would be an extraordinary duty to appeal to protect the interests of the shareholders. So I don't think there's any way possible the appeal does not go forward. Now, in terms of the fee awards in Delaware, historically speaking, if you look around the country, if there's a $1 billion fee award, the average attorney fee recovery would be about 10%. So again, just using round numbers, if we're talking about $10 billion, that would be a $1 billion fee. However, in Delaware, two things. October 2023, Judge McCormick, this particular judge, said for any plaintiff's attorney to get a huge payout, they'd have to really be a substantial factor in the outcome. However, there was another case in Delaware after that called in Dell Computers. It was a class action that was settled for $1 billion. The plaintiff's attorneys who settled it sought 28.75% of the fee award. The fee award that was granted by the Delaware judge, not Judge McCormick, was in the amount of 26.67%. So they got, on a $1 billion settlement, the award of attorney's fees was $267,067,000 for a matter that wasn't tried. The judge set forth a formula how to determine if a fee award is reasonable, because generally the way you would look at the total time, a reasonable fee, hourly fee, you'd multiply it together, and that's kind of how you'd see if a fee was reasonable. But if it's a contingency fee matter, you have to kind of look at it differently. So you look at the amount of time that was put in, where in the case it resolved, the expertise of the attorney, the result, etc. And in Delaware, the Supreme Court held that using those factors, that 26.67 fee award was acceptable, was not excessive. So if Delaware can impose a attorney fee award of that size, if we're talking about $2.5 billion as the valuation, that's a $625 million attorney fee award. If we're talking about $55 billion, that's $14 billion. If that's coming out of the pockets of Tesla shareholders, that's not an insignificant sum. So we're at the beginning of it, but that's kind of like where my kind of where I'm looking in the future. And that's why it has to be appealed and vigorously appealed.
Okay, I guess I'm so confused at this point. So thank you. You explained a lot of things, but the part is like, okay, so why are they then negotiating with the lawyers today, the plaintiff's lawyers now, so that the lawyers will know how much money that they will have in a bond? Then they're still going to do the appeal. Like, why? And you just said that the part of the appeal was to say, hey, the lawyer's fees are too excessive or whatever it is. But you know what I mean? Like, what's the benefit to Tesla to do this?
Because if they can negotiate a lower bond amount with opposing counsel, the premium will be lower, the collateral will be lower, and the risk will be lower. If they aren't able to negotiate that, then they leave it to the judge, and they'll go in and ask the judge for the same thing. Judge, we want to stay, so we're entitled to an appeal. The judge would set it, and then you don't have control over that factor. The judge could issue a higher sum. You'd be liable for more of a premium and more collateral.
It's all pretty crazy. The idea that Elon is getting paid too much because he might get what cost Tesla on paper $2.3 billion. And so now we're going to give 10 billion, 20 billion to the lawyers and potentially even more to the plaintiff. That is, this doesn't help shareholders, Your Honor. This destroys the company. So it's pretty insane to me. And I'm very curious to see how it's going to work out.
Yeah, so just to try to explain it again as briefly as I can. So the stay is just to stop enforcement of the attorney fee judgment. That's really what it's designed to do. Obviously, if there's a stay, though, that means they can't impose a pay package for that period of time also. So the pay package would have to start with the new period, and they would have to see how the appeal worked out, and then they would adjust. If the stay is not granted and there's some level of enforcement, and I guess theoretically they could go back with the pay package back to 2018 also. So it has different angles it can go based upon what the judge decides. Obviously, this judge is a case of first impression. Part of the problem with the judge's decision is it's going to be scrutinized very carefully because the standard of proof she used in imposing the highest standard of proof, and that she basically flipped the burden of proof from the plaintiff to defendant. So Elon had not only the highest standard of proof, but it was on him as opposed to the plaintiff. So all those things are going to be, decided on appeal, and they're very, that there's certain issues that they're not BS issues. Those are real issues. So I think Tesla has a good shot at, prevailing, but the risk obviously is also immense.
Okay. So from what happened this morning, you're pretty certain at this point that there's going to be an appeal. Tesla and Elon is going to do an appeal, correct?
Yes.
What's the best outcome for Tesla? Like if I was Tesla and Elon, I want Elon to have his comp package not only resolved for the past, but the future. What's the fastest way for them to do this? Is there any way that they can negotiate with the shareholder and the shareholder's attorneys and say, look, I'm going to pay you guys this much, go away, or no?
Yeah, they could negotiate. They still can negotiate a deal. And again, this deal is attorney's fees, not anything else. So it's not that they have to approach, I forgot the gentleman's name, Torrento, who's getting paid 10 grand here, or whatever he's making, the lead plaintiff in the case.
Yeah.
It's all attorney's fees. So if they negotiate a deal with the attorney's fees, and it may involve insurance. So, there's insurance paying defense costs. So they're paying out millions of dollars anyway. So you might put together a pot, and the plaintiff's attorney may not want to take the risk because they could lose the appeal and get nothing. So it's most likely that there would be attempted negotiations to resolve it beforehand. Okay. And then the judgment would be like it never happened at that point in time.
Okay, that's, I think, what's happening, right? So now earlier, Hans and Brian were saying that it's that who's got the upper hand? I was saying that the lawyers have the upper hand. They're saying no, they don't want to risk losing anything. They'd rather just negotiate now, get something from Tesla and Elon. Let's say that Tesla and Elon say, I'm going to give you guys $2 billion, go away. Or do you think that they're not going to be able to ask that much? I mean, who's got the upper hand?
Listen, if they offer to me, I'm going to retire tomorrow. So I'll go for it. Yeah. Listen, it's a realistic argument, unless there's some compelling reason beyond financial. If somebody comes to the attorneys and say, here's $2 billion or whatever the number is, and go away, they'll go away. Unless there's some, unless it's a political move or there's some campaign or something beyond that, from a business standpoint, it's just doing business.
Richard, I have a quick question. I'll go ahead, Hans. Go ahead.
Yeah, on that, I was just going to ask about what do you think the likelihood is that the appeal will actually go in Elon's favor, given the amount of political pressure? And, maybe it's just all in my mind, but I would assume, and we've kind of talked about this earlier, that the state of Delaware does not like all of these companies fleeing from the state of being incorporated in the state of Delaware. And I think that, already we've seen a massive shift in just the assumption that companies should by default incorporate there. So given those factors, what do you think, if you were the plaintiff's attorney, would you think that you stood a snowball's chance in hell at winning the appeal?
Well, I think I would stand a snowball's chance because, in general, most appeals are lost. So if you're just kind of looking on the grand scheme of things, because when somebody's evaluating an appeal, a judge, they're not looking at it the same way that they're doing in a trial. They don't look at the facts. They're looking for errors of law. So they're not looking to recreate the facts and decide, you decide it was pink and it should be blue. That's not their decision. They're deciding to see whether the application of the law is improper. And, like we're talking now, so his plaintiff's attorney not considered that this judge kind of stepped out, farther than other judges, and that creates a risk? Yes, they will. But I don't think they'll just dismiss it, because they also understand that Delaware is, in some ways, is now trying to protect activist shareholders in this way. And I don't think they would have a conversation with the Supreme Court of Delaware and instruct them what to do. But the flip side is true also. they inherently recognize that the more they become a pain in the ass for corporations doing business in Delaware, the more they're going to leave, the less money it's going to come into the coffers of the state, and the less money and less value it's going to be to the citizens of Delaware. So it does have that impact too.
Richard, assuming Tesla and Elon press forward an appeal, and it seems like they will, would there be any good reason Tesla might pull their appeal in the coming months, or do you expect them to sort of just follow it all the way through until they get a Delaware Supreme Court ruling?
Well, I mean, if they resolve it, if they work out the attorney's fees and they can move on and they feel comfortable, because they also have to feel comfortable they can construct whatever pay package they want without it being interfered with again. But I think if they're comfortable with that and they reach a deal, they would just, yeah, you're correct, by the way. You could take it up to, literally, this is a very perfect scenario. I had an appeal pending. The oral argument is today at 1:30. We mutually agreed to dismiss the appeal last night. We filed it last night. So you could literally take it down to the last minute, and that's negotiation also. So if you're plaintiff's counsel, do you want to roll now, or do you want to make them sweat and show that you really think you have a good case and try to extract some more money? One or the other. But yes, you can bail at any time.
Okay, Richard, tell me if I'm wrong. This is what I'm interpreting from everything you and Sawyer have, you guys are educating me. Okay, tell me if I'm completely wrong. I think this sounds like it's good news. It sounds like what's happened is the first steps towards a negotiation between the two sides. It's the first step to making this thing all go away faster. I don't think they're going to go through appeal anymore, but like you said, they might need to do that for negotiation. But it's like turning out to be that they want this thing go away as fast as possible and they're willing to put the money in. Is that fair to believe this way? A little hope on my side, a little optimism on my side, or am I just, no, this is just standard step by step taking what they have to do because of the ruling that went against them?
Well, the first thing I caught my eye when I read one of the articles this morning was plaintiff's counsel agreeing to the stay. So to me, that's basically asserting to the world, I'm ready to negotiate. Okay. That's what plaintiff's counsel is saying. So that's the way I read it. I would be more concerned if plaintiff's counsel said, we oppose any stay and we'll oppose it on appeal. And I've seen that stance taken a lot of times, and that's not suggesting you're going to negotiate it first. But I was pleased by that position.
Feel good. Now, we wanted to ask you this question too, Richard. Earlier, Elon actually many years ago replied to Sawyer, and he said something like, we'll never back down. Our lawyers will never back down, despite that the chances are low of winning. If it's wrong, if it's right, we'll never back down. We'll always continue to fight back. Something like that. So why would he now back down and pay lawyers' fees, which is billions of dollars? I mean, I think, of course, this is different. We're talking about his comp package, which is in the multi-billions. We're talking about the future of robotics AI, that they need to get a new comp package now. I completely want them to back down. Give these guys $2 billion, go away. But what's your read about Elon?
Yeah, I think counsel for Elon will instruct him, listen, you have a shareholder risk of X dollars. You can't expose your shareholders to that, so you got to resolve it. And you explain it the same way to the shareholders. It had nothing to do with me. I was trying to protect the shareholders. I was advised to resolve it, and I did so. It doesn't change my opinion whether I think the judge in Delaware, and I think, by the way, this part would probably be like 45 minutes long, this next part. Doesn't change my view that the judge in Delaware was improper and 45 minutes of a tirade. But the first part, he'd follow legal counsel's advice, and it wouldn't be for his own benefit. It would be for the benefit of the shareholders. And that takes it kind of out of his responsibility at that point in time.
Yeah, who else here is feeling better? I'm feeling really good.
I'm feeling a lot better for sure. My only frustration after this conversation, and thank you so much for putting our mind at ease a little bit, is the timeline. It's an overhang until it's done, and who knows how long that's going to be. Do you have any opinion on how long it will take to settle? Or are they going to, like you said, maybe just drag it out all the way to the bitter end?
Again, it's up to plaintiff's counsel. So they've they made an invitation. Is that real, or are they going to say, put up a $55 billion bond? That's our negotiation. And, Elon says $2.5 billion. But to me, I got it like they were really trying to be productive. So if that's the case, if they're really trying to be productive, can this be negotiated in the next 6 months? Done? Yeah. So it's really in plaintiff's counsel's hands, because Elon and company can do nothing. They could offer these guys $55 billion. That would probably resolve it. But other than that, other some huge number, you got to wait till plaintiff decides to play ball. But again, money talks for everybody.
What is the biggest amount that a lawyer's ever gotten in the past for whatever lawsuit?
I think in like one of these huge environmental class actions in the low billions.
That's the most.
Low billion.
So
low
these
billion.
guys will probably ask for something like the most that they can get. So maybe 2 billion. They'd be happy.
If I were there,
Yeah.
reading what that prior judge said, 26.7%. If I'm going in, I ask for 55 billion, and I ask for 26%.
Of 55 billion, which is what, 10 billion?
More. It's a big number. 14, 12, 14, somewhere in there.
And what would Elon or Tesla be able to afford? They wouldn't pay 14 billion,
They wouldn't.
right?
They wouldn't. Again, I don't think that's going to be the end result anyway. But if you're going to negotiate, if you're actually going to negotiate, you're going to start off with your real potential claim, and then you're going to come back down. And Elon and Tesla, I think they'd focus on that 2.4. That area would be really what they thought would be, if there should be any number that should be used, it should be 2.4. And then they would use like the 10% number I mentioned. And then they might look at the hours, the billings, and literally go through them all and calculate a number. Yeah. And it's going to be substantially less than $1 billion if you calculate all the legal fees. The hours.
What's your knowledge of the insurance? What's the corporate insurance that could cover some of
I'm
this?
sure there's directors and officers insurance, which usually it'll cover defense costs. It also will cover liability depending on what the amount of the policy is, unless there's an intentional, a claim for intentional act. But if there's coverage, it'll cover everything up to the value of the policy. It's hard to get a policy for, $10 billion. I don't know what their policy is, but I'm sure it covered a lot of their legal fees to this point in time. That's the benefit.
You're on mute now.
Oh, that's the benefit of a D&O policy.
Right.
In terms of like Elon or Tesla deciding to press forward, I sort of juggle between, maybe it's just better for Elon and Tesla to just, as you said, for them to come to some agreement with legal fees and then to just move on, and then they can just focus on the next compensation package. Or I feel like Elon is the type of person also to be like, this ruling is so wrong and sets such a bad precedent that I feel like a moral obligation almost to like go after this and appeal it.
Listen, I agree 100% with your analysis there, on both sides, because I think I think they could buy their way out for a big number, but a reasonable number. But again, if you look at the way he acts historically, it's tough for him to let go and to move on. Again, if I was his counsel, I would try to focus on his obligation to shareholders, and he could use that as a positive, not a negative, and move on. And he could get his pay package done, which is ultimately the much bigger issue for him and for all Tesla shareholders. So if I were his counsel, I would encourage, I understand, what the real facts are, and we all understand it, but I would certainly encourage to work out a deal, pay out some number, move on, get his pay package, and let Tesla move forward.
Richard, is Elon's moves, what he's been saying about Delaware, is it been powerful? Is this a big deal? Is somehow because of the Delaware courts, are they going to actually, change their whatever because of what's happening with the flight of new companies out of them? Is it working? And then does it even have a chance of working?
Well, we don't know if it's working yet, because I don't think there hasn't been a flight yet. But the one thing that did change, which I think is somewhat positive, is Delaware changed their law. And recently, Their law was previously that they required 100% shareholder approval to allow reincorporation outside of Delaware, and now it just requires a majority of the shareholders. So I would say that's a positive step that makes it easier to get out of Delaware, and might reflect their easing maybe their policies and restrictions on companies in Delaware.
What other moves could Elon and Tesla do to put in the pressure to either the lawyer or to Delaware or something to tilt it back to their strength, something to recoup some of their power back?
I mean, you could certainly, he started, but you could certainly start a movement of moving companies out of Delaware. You could start some kind of organization designed, Fair Corporations of America. I don't know what it is, but you could certainly start something and really press it publicly, and just drain. Listen, if you drain capital out of Delaware, it's going to be influential.
Do you think it's political?
It's political, but it's also, from a practical standpoint, Delaware. I don't think
everybody's saying that the lawyer is related, or not related, but very much associated with the Democrats and the Bidens and everybody up there, and that's what they're doing this for. It's a Biden maneuver. Do you believe that that's the case?
I don't know. I don't know. I would say this: I know the judge doesn't like Elon, so that's enough for me. I wouldn't look beyond that. If I was analyzing it, would I care if it was political or because he ate spaghetti on Tuesdays? It really wouldn't make a difference to me. She has a bias, and if you look at her opinion, the way she expressed some of her thoughts was too gleeful for my likings, and it would be picked up that it would suggest some kind of bias. So to me, I don't know if it's political or whatever, but she certainly doesn't like him.
So a question that I have.
Oh, go ahead, Hans.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
The thing that I saw in there was her saying that this pay package is too large. Listen, honey, it's not for you to decide. That's for the board and the shareholders to decide. I bought my shares after this comp plan was agreed upon, was put what I thought was in place and in force. And what I said at the time was, look, that's an outrageous amount of money. But if these milestones, which are, as Alan Sorkin pointed out, pointed out, impossible. These are impossible milestones. If they are accomplished, it means my small investment will pay off my house. So I knew before I bought the shares that this was a real thing, and I was excited about it. Is it fair to give him that much money? It's what we agreed to. It was the deal we accepted. And in that regard, I am perfectly pleased. And Tesla is not giving him $55 billion. Tesla's giving him $2 billion. That's not a lot of money compared to this monstrous machine that he has built that has made a lot of millionaires. That's my take.
I was troubled by, in fact, I think it's the second word in her opinion, the richest man is the richest man overpaid? I don't remember the exact quote. But whether his wealth is irrelevant. The amount he gets paid is relevant, but his wealth is irrelevant. So the fact that she started off and took his wealth into account by the second word in her opinion, to me, started her off on the wrong path and made everything that she stated thereafter suspect, because she used the wrong determination to start off with.
So the question that I was going to ask earlier is, is it possible for Tesla to negotiate a deal with the plaintiff's attorneys where they basically waive their right to actually get a larger fee award if the appeal were to lose, but in exchange for that take like a guaranteed, basically for Tesla to be able to proceed forward with the appeal, and the attorneys just accept whatever the fee award was at this initial time, regardless of the outcome of the appeal, so that Tesla is kind of free to try to pursue the appeal as vigorously as possible, and the plaintiff's attorneys just have whatever size award that they agree to mutually without the input from the court.
Yeah, so let me answer it this way. So if you maybe have 5 issues on appeal, could you settle out 2 of them and then just go and litigate the 3? Yeah. So you could agree to on a fee award, you could agree on some other circumstances, and maybe the overall question was the judge allowed to do this, and should the pay package survive? Is that the only issue on appeal? Yeah, you could do it like that. Yes.
Where are you sitting on this, Sawyer? What's your thinking?
No, I was reading something else and thinking about that.
Okay, gotcha. So if I step back and look at this whole thing, right? I mean, we all can understand here. The lawyers did this on behalf of this shareholder had 9 shares. He only getting a $10,000. This has nothing to do with the idea, or what's the word? The principle of this, that it was this pay package was unfair to shareholders. That's got nothing to do with that. This is all about a money grab by the lawyers. They ended up getting the judge to side with them. And so it's a money grab. And so for them, like you said, they just want money. You give them the money, they'll go away. But on the other side, you got Elon and Tesla, who do believe that this is a real principle situation here. We don't know what they're going to do, but they're stuck. They're stuck in a hard place, especially right this moment. Robotics AI is skyrocketing like crazy. All of the other Mag 6 are taking advantage of the AI boom. Money's flowing to them. They need to put in billions of dollars into building out robotics AI. Here's Tesla not having their CEO compensated properly. He wants to be compensated now because when the price is low, so that he can achieve these outsized, milestones. So time is of an essence for Tesla. They're kind of stuck. And that's why I think that I'm still debating with these two here, Hans and Brian. I think that lawyers have the upper hand. They're going to get what they want. Tesla needs to buckle down and do it.
One thing that I would point out here too is just the fact that Tesla opened up the opportunity for this to be challenged by proposing a pay package that was unprecedented. So, what does unprecedented in the legal world get you? It gets you challenged. Like, that's how this works. It's not something that's valid until it's upheld when you are doing something that's outside of what you have precedent for. I don't like that fact. That's not something that I think is a positive thing. I feel like this pay package was very aligned with shareholder values, and I love performance-based pay. I think it was a very good and well-structured overall pay package, but just the fact that it is something that, larger, when he achieved all those things than any previous pay package, that's one area where you stick out like a sore thumb and you're kind of begging to get challenge.
How is it larger though? Elon got $56 billion for making a company multi-trillion dollars. So what you have to look at the percentage,
larger
not the amount.
But no one's looking at that's just not how headlines work. Headlines work off of total amount, not percentages.
I was going to say, I think what's unfair is that it's the timing of the trial or the result that influences the result in this way. So this pay package occurred, this is 2018. So what happens if this case went to trial when Tesla was at its all-time high? Should that have changed the result? Really? Nothing has changed, but I think everybody would be much more sympathetic to Elon if it happened to be when Tesla was at 400, 1200, whatever it was, 1200. So it doesn't make sense to me that should influence the decision just because when in that time frame you end up going to trial. Because I could look back to, was Elon so much more valuable when Tesla was at its highest amount? Didn't he deserve more money then too, I guess? So why does it make a difference when we try the case?
Was there any maneuvering to try to position the case now? Nothing, right? You had to wait for the judge to make her decision. Do you think she made a decision?
It took her a long time. It took her a long time.
Yeah.
Did she wait? Yeah. I don't remember what the stock price was when the decision was submitted, which was like April of 2023. But it was probably higher than it was today, I guess, I think.
And worth mentioning, when these shares are exercised, Elon puts money into Tesla in the form of cash and receives stocks that are created out of thin air that have already been accounted for as expenses. So when those shares would be executed, when that option would be exercised, it would actually result in a net cash benefit for Tesla on the books. Thoughts? Got some dead air here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, no, it is, he has to purchase them. All he has been given is the right to purchase shares at 2017 prices. He had that right in 2017, he just didn't have the ability. And now, in the future, he can exercise like he did last time with his previous award, and exercise a portion of them just to pay the taxes and purchase the rest.
Yeah. All I know is that when the pay package went in, the market cap was less than $50 billion, and it's done okay. So
It's done okay.
yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, he can get what he wants, and if he continues on, we'll all have big smiles on our faces 5 years from now, anyway. So
Okay, so that's a good question to ask you then. So the whole lawsuit happened because of this outsized reward, despite, none of us believe it was, crazy. Could they then turn around and give him something similar now for the next pay package? Because that's what we want. We want him to take this $700 billion company to become a $7 trillion, $15 trillion company with robotics AI. We want him to do this, but we can't give him the same pay package that was offered, similar milestone base, no salary, massive gains if he could take the company 10x. Is that now off the table, or is that still possible despite what happened?
if we're moving or we're staying. If we're moving, then if we're moving to Texas, if we're moving to Nevada or Texas, then we're okay. For certainly the pay package that comes in after this one.
Yes.
The question is, and I don't know whether they would exert jurisdiction over anything that happened before, the 2018 to 2022 period. If this Delaware court says we have jurisdiction over any decision that's made because we already ruled on it, and therefore you can't do that. But for anything that happens after that, if you're in Texas, Nevada, whatever, you could do whatever you want. The Delaware court.
Let's say, could they do this? Okay, forget the 2018 pay package. I'm just totally throwing out ideas. Okay, dumb ideas. I'm going to create you a brand new one, and I'm going to say that if the shareholders approve it, if in the next 6 months, if you get the $700 billion market cap to $800 billion cap, we're going to give you what we owed you in 2018. And then from then on, it's like from 800 billion to 8 trillion to whatever. Could we do something like that? If the shareholders voted on it.
If it's this court, I think this court's going to say no.
Yeah.
If it's another court, I think they'll say yes. If it's a court that wants your business, they'll say yes. If it's a court that wants to be a pain in the butt, they'll say no. Maybe if it was 700 to, 1.2 billion or trillion. Yeah, maybe it's like that. Yeah, hopefully not billion. 7.2 trillion. Then perhaps. But for like a minimal jump, because he could probably do something to orchestrate $100 billion jump. We've sped up the release of the new Y in the United States. I know we talked about it's coming in 2025, but maybe August of 2024, and then we got $100 billion jump. So it's too easily to be manipulated, I think.
Wouldn't it be reasonable if they would just go to extreme lengths to ensure that it is fairly negotiated by independent parties? Bring in some well-regarded firm that does that kind of thing and let them negotiate it, and then that would alleviate the concerns moving forward? Or are we kind of past that point?
No, I think it makes anything you do to establish some kind of more objectivity, that you don't have control over the negotiations per se, or the numbers. Yeah, I think it makes it look cleaner, and you have more, it'll go farther. But again, if you're in Delaware, you're going against these guys that don't like you. So if you give them any chance to go against it, they will.
I don't think it mattered, right? Because even the previous one, apparently that was designed, that shareholder agreement was designed by a university group that did it. Although, of course, this lawyer, the judge said, no, Elon had outsized influence on it. But apparently it was done by a third party already. So,
yeah, I just think the bottom line, if we cut to the chase, my bottom line is judge just didn't like him. and the
The
judge
judge
wasn't,
didn't like 'em.
and was looking for a reason and a way of ruling against them, and that's why she used those two tools I mentioned about the burden of proof and the standard.
Well, fortunately, she put those in the ruling, which I think if she was really being smart, she would have gone to great lengths to try and obscure that bias. But they are in the ruling, and I think I would hope that that would open the door to some amount of challenge on appeal. But on
Listen,
that, of course, I don't know.
If she were really, this is my opinion, obviously not legal advice. If she were really prudent and she really wanted her ruling to stand, what she should have done is used the old standard of proof, imposed the burden of proof on the plaintiff, and since it's a factual question for her to decide, she decides to come down on the side of the plaintiff. And there's no issue about she shifted, she made this kind of weird evidentiary change, and she shifted the burden of proof, which gave Elon and his crew the number one appealable issue. So I think that was, and I think she might have been overwhelmed by her dislike for Elon and her willingness to be stridently in public about that stance.
What's your best guess then? If they don't negotiate now and they do take it to appeal, what's your best guess of the likelihood that Tesla could win the appeal?
More than 50-50. I mean, generally it'll be less than 50. You know, I can't say because I don't know the judges in Delaware. Generally, you're more likely to lose. So
Right, you said that earlier.
Yeah. So this case, I would say they're more likely to win, but whatever I said, they're 62.4% chance to win. You know, when lawyers do that, it's just making up nonsense. So I think they'd be more likely to prevail based upon those little oddities that she did. And again, you know, it could be the case, just so we talk about this also, I guess I should have mentioned this earlier. We could have an appeal. We could have appeal of all the issues. She could rule on some of the issues. She could say, okay, we're going to keep the same, I'm talking about the Supreme Court reviewing McCormick's ruling. The Supreme Court could say, these 3 rulings stand, these 2 rulings don't stand. And it might be like, for example, everything could stand but the attorney's fees. Maybe she issues too high an award and they reduce the attorney's fees. So all those are possible in front of the Supreme Court of Delaware. But again, I think the most prudent method and what I would expect them to do is be in the process of negotiating. Even when they're negotiating that stay, that's kind of the beginning of the bigger negotiation.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying.
And it's an easy way to feel out somebody, right? If you can't negotiate this preliminary issue, trying to get the bigger issue is going to be a waste of time. But you know, that's how I would interpret it.
All right.
So procedural question. What if the Supreme Court on appeal decides that Judge McCormick was not able to pull the switcheroo on the burden of proof that she pulled, and that the burden of proof should have been on the plaintiff rather than on Elon? Does that mean basically the whole rest of the case from that point forward gets retried, or what happens in that scenario?
So the options are, they could say it was not a prejudicial error. So they could say, yeah, there's a mistake, but it didn't affect the outcome of the case. They could impose their own ruling on it. So if they said, well, the wrong burden of proof was imposed, we deem that if the correct burden was imposed, the result would be as follows, and we're going to actually change the result. Or they could send it back to the trial court with instructions, say, use this standard of proof, retry the case. Very exciting stuff.
It is exciting. No, honestly, it is. It's important. It's incredibly important at this right moment for Tesla and for the world, as we've been saying. So thank you so much for joining us, Richard. This was valuable, your comments and your expertise and what you know. Not legal advice. We know that you're just guessing and making decisions, but it gave us better than what we could do, right? To understand the scenario.
Well, thanks for letting me share, and to all of you guys, I enjoy all of you, and be well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Richard.
Bye, all.